I've kind of told them, hey, you know what? If you grow to where you don't like it, we'll shut it down. But the podcast will grow with you. And obviously our audience changes slightly as that happens. So it's an interesting dynamic of how we move past that.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It's your host, Adam A. Adams, and today I'm joined with Stephen Queener, who is one of the hosts of Myla and Madz with Dad. He's also got another podcast about faith, and the one that he has, the longest running one, is building up some good traction. So as we record, he's only 17 episodes in, but he has 14 ratings and reviews. And what that means to me is that they've been doing a good job promoting it, getting it out there, letting people know about it. And so we'll find out what he's doing to let other people know about his podcast, because I assume that there's somebody listening who's 40 episodes in and doesn't even have 14 ratings yet. And so if that's you, just know that I'm going to be asking him, how did he get that traction? What did he do to do that? So Stephen, take me back to the kid table. Why don't you take me and the listener all the way back to the kid table, how much fun you had, and why you started the show?
Oh, absolutely. It's my favorite story to tell. So back in Thanksgiving, back in 2020, at the height of COVID, we didn't want to cram all the adults at one table because we have some elderly and some other people. So, man, I volunteered tribute, put me at the kids' table, I'll hang out with them. And man, we cut up and we had so many laughs, and I just literally enjoyed it so much. I came home and I told my wife, I said, we need to just put them on a podcast. I can be there to kind of regulate it, but it's all about them. So I did what everybody does. I got on Google and said, I need a 4-person podcast kit. And what do? You get a bunch of junk. So that's what we did. And we tried it out. It was me and my 2 daughters and my nieces. And man, it was absolutely horrid.
What made it horrid?
So we didn't have good mics. We didn't have a good interface. And man, if you don't have any of that, we had all kinds of humming, and I didn't understand anything about editing and making it all work. So it was just terrible. It was awful. And then not only that, I think at that time they were 6, 7. So can you imagine editing and trying to tell them to talk into the microphone and all the things that make our job hard,
Yeah.
So we put it in a box and we left it there for about 3 years.
Okay.
We kind of joined a new ministry, and I was talking to the preacher and I said, man, I've got some podcast stuff. If you're trying to make an outreach, let's make a podcast. And he said, oh, that'd be great. So me and my daughter, we got it all back out and we tried it, and it still sucks. So of course, man, I just started throwing money into it, and we're going to buy good stuff. And at this point, me and my daughters had no intentions of doing a podcast. So as we were playing with it and trying to get it all set up, all the new stuff, I was like, man, this is awesome. Why don't me and my oldest daughter, Myla, just do a podcast?
Who's Madz? Is that your other daughter?
So that's my other daughter. She wanted nothing to do with it. And she came out of her bedroom and said, you guys are starting a podcast? I said, yeah, do you want to be on it? She said, of course. So she's actually turned out to be kind of the hoot of the whole thing. And man, we've been going, we've got 17 in, and it's just been a blast. It really has.
That's pretty cool. I was asking you in the green room about monetizing. Is that something that's in the future, and what are you thinking about to get there?
Oh, man, I'd love to. I know very little about that side of it. And I also know that I'm doing it with my daughter. So I want to be careful on who we utilize to monetize. And I don't want to do some crazy commercials or ads that doesn't fit us. So, man, yeah, any advice you have on that, I'm an open book because I know nothing.
Yeah, well, good question. I have helped a few of my clients get some monetization. And once I monetized my podcast before I ever launched. And so I know other people can do that too. I know it's not even about the listener. It's about your niche. And so I guess if you were looking to monetize, we would need to figure out, what do you and the girls talk about most of the time? What is kind of the focus? Who do you want to listen? And when you understand all the way who that is that you want listening, and you want to be adding value to them in any way, like entertainment, education, or whatever it is, then I think that the next step gets a lot easier. So may I ask you real quick, do you have an avatar? Is there somebody you want listening to that podcast?
So our goal was just a family podcast, just a real clean. And part of our problem is we don't have anything we talk about. Most of it's just us cutting up, having a good time. And man, I learned so much about them during this process. And it's hilarious, or at least I think so, right? To watch all that unfold. And I started off with kind of a plan. I would kind of transition with dad jokes, and I would come across with some interesting fun facts. And we've moved away from all that because it was a real weight on the show. It just kind of drug it down. So now we've kind of just moved to where it's all just us talking, almost like a morning show, if you would. I mean, just kind of talking about current stuff and family stuff. And man, it's just all kinds of craziness. One example of like my youngest daughter, Madz, on the last one, I'm talking about supplies of toilet paper. You know, I didn't realize there was even 3 and 4 ply toilet paper.
I usually get my toilet paper at the grocery store, but a friend of mine told me I was ridiculous because I need to be getting it at Costco. And it made sense because it sounds like it probably is cheaper. So I was like, all right, I'll go to Costco. But then I was running out of toilet paper because Costco's far away from me. And so I go, I wonder what I can find on Amazon. So I typed in 2-ply toilet paper, and what came up was like 3-ply and 4-ply. And I'm like, that's a real thing?
Right. So that's what I had 15 years ago. They apparently engineered the 3-ply. Okay. And as I was telling her all this, because I thought we had 2-ply, and I just guessed they would say some crazy number. But she said, I don't know. I just crunch it up. It doesn't matter what it is. I said, hold on. You crunch your toilet paper up? So that's where I learned that she just takes a wad of toilet paper like a softball and uses it that way. So stuff like that. Man. I learned all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's hilarious to watch it unfold. And it's just wild. It's fun.
Yeah. Talking about how people use toilet paper is never a fun idea. Never a fun idea. Here's the thing. They think you're gross and you think they're gross.
100%.
You tell them how you use it and they're like, oh, that's probably terrible. And then they tell you how they use it and you're just like, are you kidding me? That's way worse. That's way worse.
I just imagine whatever you can do to get the most tissue on the most surface is the best plan, right?
All right, perfect. Well, now that we've talked about all of the things, this has been a great episode. Thank you for coming. So I'm looking at the Yo-Yo Dollar Tree special, and it's reminding me of the grocery store the other day. They had a butterfly yo-yo.
Oh, yeah. It's a great one.
Those are the kinds that I like to use. When I was young, I had a yo-yo show with my buddy. We're not that good, but we knew a few tricks. And we went and saw, I'm in Denver, so we saw this like Bronco stuff, a Bronco glass, which I bought, and I didn't realize till later it was a $20 pint glass.
Right.
How could you spend $20 on a pint glass? It's probably worth like 50 cents. Anyway, well, it has the Bronco logo on it, so maybe they got to get paid somehow. But they had this butterfly yo-yo, and I put it in the cart, and the girl that I was with didn't know that I was like, that I had a yo-yo show when I was young. So I was getting ready to like show all the tricks. As I was paying for it, I thought it would be the Dollar Tree special type of yo-yo.
Right.
And so I'm like, no, I think I'm not going to get it. So I ended up giving it to the lady that was checking us out. But you guys got a Dollar Tree special. Can I hear just what happened in that episode?
Yeah. So, man, I can't remember how we got so sidetracked. And that's kind of the moral of the show, right? But somehow I was talking about the stuff we used to have as kids to keep us busy because we didn't have cell phones and iPads. And I was talking about the yo-yos, and I said, yeah, I just had a Dollar Tree special. You know, we never bought the Dunkins. We couldn't afford them. And then I pulled it up, and the Dunkin was only $5 now. And I was like, well, how much could it have been then? I'm running around with the Dollar Tree special, and I can't do any of the cool tricks that like you and your friend was doing.
Yo-yos are fun, though. Have you ever done around the world?
Man, I remember trying a bunch of them, but I never had a lot of good luck with them. And obviously, you guys knew all the cool stuff. But
yeah, I'm sure it's harder with a cheaper yo-yo for sure. The Dunkins that we would use, they were fair. We could walk the dog around the world multiple times. There's like, we could do this thing where you like build some type of tower. I don't remember what it's called, but you swing in between, and then you let it go, and then you'll be back to normal. So.
How did you learn all that stuff? Because we didn't have YouTube then, you know?
Yeah, there was not YouTube. What did I do to learn them? I think I learned a couple from friends, and I learned a couple from just watching people do them. Obviously not on YouTube, but somehow on a TV screen, and being like, I wonder how that works. When you can finally sleep a yo-yo, that's when, once you can sleep it, then doing the rest of the yo-yo tricks becomes a lot easier. Like around the world is all in the sleep mode, or the one where it's swinging. I don't remember if it's called cradle or something, but that one, yeah, I can't remember what they're all called because this was, dating myself, but probably at least 25 years ago. At least 25 years back.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But man, yeah, circling back. So when we first started this thing, man, I knew nothing about podcasts. And so I did a lot of research and got us on all the platforms, got everything set up, and we had to launch our first episode. And I've got these two kids looking at me like, hey, how many people's going to listen, Dad? Probably nobody, but let's give it a shot and see what we can do. I reached out to our local morning show here in Knoxville, and they loved it. They loved our trailer. They brought us on. We've been on there, talked to them, and they've got a little podcast they do after the show. And man, they've been a huge success in helping us get going and helping grow our audience just locally, of course. But
that's pretty cool. So you called. Now, I want the listener to gain something from this.
Okay.
So you were wondering how to monetize it. You thought maybe nobody would hear it.
That's right.
And what made you call the radio station? How did you find the number of the radio station? What did you say in order to get them to listen? And when you ended up coming on the radio station, did they just play an episode that you already had? Or did you guys go into the place or do it over the phone? How did that look?
So our local radio station, I think all of them kind of have the same thing. You can call in or you can text in now. And man, I've been a long-time listener for years, so I kind of knew who they are and kind of what they were attracted to. So man, I just sent them a text. It was just a shot in the wind. I said, hey, it's me and my daughters. We started this podcast, and I went through the whole spiel of what we do and what our goal is.
What is the goal? What did you tell them?
The goal, I think I just told them something like, my goal is just to bond with my daughters and to do it on air and really just let their personalities develop. And I can't remember if I told them then or later, but man, public speaking was always a tough thing for me. And anything I can do to develop them into better speakers.
I love that.
Man, that's exactly awesome. My goal. Yeah. And even if nobody listened, just going back and hearing yourself and trying to do it right and talking to them, man, that's hard stuff. It's really hard.
Yeah. So this is also going to be kind of cool for them. How old are Myla and Madz right now?
Madz is 10. Myla is 11.
Okay. Wow. They're only a year apart?
13 months, man. It's okay. Close.
All right. Does everybody bring that up?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Everyone thinks they're twins and that drives them bananas,
That's funny. So does the younger one mind to be called a twin with the older one?
Of course not. Yeah, she loves it.
She's like, yeah, they think I'm old. Like, I'm not a little girl.
Yeah, now, if you listen to the podcast, and you can tell they're polar opposites.
Okay.
And that kind of helps it with it all shine. And man, it's a lot of pressure on me too to edit it and make sure, there's nothing in there that they've said that's going to offend anybody, hurt anyone's feelings, or cause them any negative effects at school or outside of school or, in the future. Shucks, you can't make a bad tweet now.
Do you do something where while the interview is going, like you've got a timer in front of you, and then do you write down like, oh, she just used the N-word, at 18 minutes and 20 seconds, we got to cut that out or something like this?
And it's going to sound crazy because you do so many, but I don't. I do 2 a week. I do one on this podcast and one on the other. And
okay.
Man, I go through every second of that thing.
Okay.
And just relive it multiple times and edit it and cool. Really dwindle it down to something that's really appropriate to put out there that's never going to affect them in any negative light.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think it's going to be something that they can be proud of as well. Like you said, that they're learning public speaking but also I think it's kind of like a diary in a way.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
kind of like, I never had one. I never had a diary when I grew up. I tried it for like a couple of days and then stopped. And then a year or two later, I tried it for a couple of days and stopped. And a teacher made us do it. And I did it a few days, but I never really got into it. And the interesting thing is I never understood how much I would kick myself. Make sure that Myla and Madz know this. But I never understood how much that I ended up being disappointed that I never kept a journal.
Yeah, you can't remember everything. It's impossible. Yeah. But man, as far as like, I don't want to narrow it down too much to where the audience doesn't get anything from it, but I'm dealing with 2 sisters that are 10 and 11. The emotions are out of this roof. We've came down and recorded 10 minutes of a podcast before, and we just decided, you know what, this isn't the best time. You guys aren't getting along. She's crying because you cut her off, and you cut her off too many times, and man, it's a nightmare, right? But
interesting. So what happens when you start recording for 10 minutes and then you have to pack up? Like, do you miss an episode that week, or do you record on a different day and it's fine?
So usually, just so we don't get into the acting, I don't want to do that. So I have to come up with all new content, all new stuff, and we just start over.
Okay.
So it's pretty cumbersome on me, but it's much better than, okay, hey, let's redo that bit.
What are your thoughts about not wanting acting? Where does this come from and what does it really mean? And I'm thinking that it might have some value to a listener who has a podcast, regardless of their age. What does it mean when you say you don't want acting to happen on the podcast?
Just like I brought up the toilet paper to you a minute ago, if we tried to redo that bit, man, there's no way we could originally do it because we're not actors. And I tried to get my oldest daughter, Myla, I'll try to get her to do some things sometimes, like, hey, just put a little bit more expression in that. She'll say, no, Dad, I'm not an actor or actress, and we're not acting. We're doing a podcast. If you want me to do a podcast, I'll do it with you, but I'm not acting.
Yeah, that's
fair
funny.
enough.
Okay, cool. So what is your goal? Because I know you've been doing this a short time. You're also doing that other podcast about your faith.
That's right.
You own all these expensive mics now for you and your daughters.
Yeah.
What's kind of like the plan? Where do you want to go with all of this?
Man, actually, I don't have a plan. And that's part of my problem, right? Anytime you start a business, even something like podcasting, you got to have a business plan. I kind of stumbled into this so quickly that I don't have a plan. But I know me and my girls, it's kind of a give and take, because I think their concern is, oh, we're going to outgrow the podcast. We're going to outgrow this fun stuff with Dad, right? And I've kind of told them, hey, you know what? If you grow to where you don't like it, we'll shut it down. But the podcast will grow with you. And obviously our audience changes slightly as that happens. So it's an interesting dynamic of how we move past that. So that's one of our hurdles, because it's constantly going to be changing, and we're going to be going from the kids into the teens and kind of moving up. But with the Just Jesus podcast, I think it's just keep it rolling as long as it'll go. And hopefully my plan would be to turn it into a nonprofit, kind of fund it that way and kind of keep it going and see what we can do to help some of the other outreach here locally and across the nation.
That's pretty cool. And the girls, you mentioned that you like their learning public speaking.
Absolutely.
And it's been a short amount of time, 17 episodes. I would say for me, it took I learned a lot over my first 40 episodes, and I was still learning quite a bit over the first 300. And so now that I've done 1,000, I'm still learning every time, even just something small. But I'm curious, how the daughters have changed over this, or if they're the same, if they've gotten more mature, or what is it that's kind of happened with them so far, maybe your relationship with them.
Yeah, the relationship is awesome. It's been great for that. It's been a wonderful time. And that's kind of what the show's all about, just showing our dynamic relationship. And mostly it's us with a bunch of shenanigans and their mom getting mad at us. But
is Mom ever on the podcast?
So this weekend will be her first time coming on. And I don't think she was too excited about it.
Okay.
So as far as the kids growing, man, there's so many things. Used to, I'd have to pause it all the time. Hey, make sure we're talking into the microphone. If you turn to look at somebody, make sure you're doing it with the microphone. And man, that would create a lot of problems, and they'd start huffing up and getting mad. And even adults, we kind of get our feelings hurt when somebody tells us, hey, you're doing that wrong. Fix it.
Yeah. I have clients that pay me to do podcasting. And sometimes I'll say, hey, you need to wear headphones, or, hey, the reason why this is happening is the headphones. And they'll freak out about this. They'll freak out because, I don't look very good if I wear headphones. So they're too bulky, or they don't want the mic in the camera.
Right.
This happens more than you think. There's a lot of people that try really hard to get the mic out of the video because they think that it makes them look a certain type of way. And so I'm constantly being like, who cares? First and foremost, most of the people listening are only listening. But secondly, you have a professional mic. What's the problem with people knowing that you have a professional mic? You want to sound good? You're going to get this professional. Yours is like a $500 mic, plus all the other stuff that you needed to hook it up with.
Right.
And so you're going to buy this mic, and then you're going to put it far away from your mouth, and you can't even hear you anymore. Now it's pointless that you're not using good mic technique. Then what's the point of spending $500 on an expensive mic? That's
right. No matter how cool you look, if they can't hear you, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And you look pretty cool. I'll just say that just right now. All right. So the girls, they've learned a lot. So right now they're not turning their mouth away from the mic while they're talking. What else?
Oh man, it's night and day. So now they'll come down before me. They'll even start setting everything up. They'll get all the mics leveled out. They're actually setting up dates with their friends so they can all come over and they can record their own little recordings. And man,
that's pretty fun.
Super cool for them. And I enjoy it. And actually, they kind of fluffed me up a little bit. They said, oh, well, they're all coming over, but they want you to ask the questions. I said, all right, cool, I'll be there.
So did they write down questions for you to ask, or what happened?
No, they want me to come up with all the questions.
Oh, okay, good.
Just surprise them. But so we went back and we listened to some of our original podcasts, like the first, second, and third one. And Myla, she was listening. She said, "What were we doing? Why are we talking so loud? Why are we so close to the mic? Why are we doing this?" And just literally picking apart all the things that I've said before. And I'm just like, I don't know. I tried to tell you.
That's funny. So if we listen back to episode 1 and 2, we'll hear some of that.
Oh man. So episode 1 and 2. So we upgraded from our first mics, which were just regular dynamic mics, but they were super hard to talk into. We didn't have the right interface. And then we switched to condenser mics, which bring their own set of problems. And those, you really had to focus on where we're talking because I couldn't turn them up. And that's another thing I'd like to talk about that might help somebody is we've got the 3 of us, sometimes 4, in a fairly small room. Man, it's hard to get the microphones set up to where they're not feeding over top of each other and constantly fighting that battle, especially when you go into editing. If you're in deep editing, trying to knock out someone's, yawning or someone's burping or whatever we're dealing with at that moment. I get it all in here. But man, it makes a big difference. And that's the luxury of these mics. I can turn them down. We can talk into them and it's awesome.
Do you record separate tracks with your girls?
I do. I ended up with a Tascam Mixcast 4. I don't know if you're familiar with those. It's kind of like the Rode Pro. And it can do 4 individual tracks, plus everything else is separate as well. It was night and day difference trying to organize and make everything make sense. And it's been wonderful for us.
That's pretty cool. So I use Zoom to record. I do have a Rodecaster. I do have a Shure mic that I really enjoy a lot. And when I record, I use Zoom, but a lot of people, they don't think Zoom's very good. What do you guys use when you record? Is there no need for that? Is because your piece of equipment, you just put you put a memory card inside of it, and then that's how you get the sound, or are you recording onto a virtual software, something like Zoom?
So either way is possible. What I usually do is the SD card, and I haven't figured out how to incorporate video yet. Obviously,
okay, so it's all audio right now.
Right now, that's all it is.
And if you had video, you would need several camera angles. I'm talking like 3 at minimum.
And that's my holdup. I don't want to make the mistake that I did with the microphones and everything else and jump in too quick. So, man, if you have any input on how to incorporate that and how to bring it all together, that'd be awesome.
I will try. I'll talk about a video switcher here in a second. But you said you don't want to make the same mistake jumping in too fast. Do you mean because you started with cheaper dynamic mics, then went to condenser mics and now have really nice equipment? Or do you mean that you have really nice equipment and it cost more than you would have wanted and you're scared that the video switcher will cost more than you want?
No, so I would much rather dive all in and not have to make the mistakes of buying multiple things again. So when I actually ordered these microphones, man, I want to think 6 different microphones at the same time, the RE20 being one of them, the RE320, man, I went through a whole spectrum of them and tried them all out, had the girls test them out, I tested them out, and we went through this whole dynamic of trying to figure out which one works best for us. And one thing good with the Shures is, man, you can touch them. You can bounce them around, and you don't get that feedback noise. There's not many microphones that do that, and especially with my 10 and 11-year-old co-host, man, they're rough on some equipment.
So they wrestle the equipment, or they kick it, or karate chop it, all of the above?
Every day. This is all they do.
Okay. Oh, so they're touching the mics.
Oh, man, they're wearing them out. Yeah.
What's interesting is I can only hear a very small amount of you when you're touching that mic. It only has happened once or twice. And if the person listening could see the video and see how much you're banging on it, I think they would be impressed. And it's just what happens when you have a decent mic with just decent equipment. They say garbage in, garbage out, and this is a way to kind of solve that. And so basically what I've seen a lot of is people use cameras that they would take pictures with, and they'll plug them in, and then they'll just have 3 or 4 different camera angles. And an easy thing to do, and I don't use this myself because I don't care as much about the video experience on my end. When we serve clients, we care a lot more about the audio, the sound quality, and growing the audience on the Apple podcast.
That's right.
When it comes to YouTube type of stuff, like when you're actually going to be putting out the video, there's different ways that you can get the cameras and different types of cameras. And I would say just get something that's not too expensive, even like a 1080p. A 1080p would be good enough. You don't need like a 2K or 4K camera for most of this. They're just huge files. And so that high quality is not that important to most people for most things.
Right.
But there's these things called Video Switcher. And on our website, if you go to growyourshow.com/PDF, there's a downloadable PDF. And you could also just scroll down, bypass putting in your email. And there's a lot of different equipment. And one of the things is like these video switchers. And so there's a couple options. And what's cool about them, there's two ways to do this. Stephen, one way is that you have the switcher in front of you the entire time. And when Myla's talking, you might push 1. When Madz is talking, you might push 2. And when you're talking, you might push 3. And when their friend is talking, or when you want everybody, and if everybody's laughing, you push 4. And it has a camera angle where everybody's in. And you have to kind of be on top of it while you're doing it. That's the easiest way for post-production. But it's a little harder while recording. Sometimes people have somebody in their studio that pushes those buttons for them. One button might even be labeled as Myla, and one might be labeled as Dad, for example. And so when Dad starts talking, they push that other one. The other way to do it, it's a lot harder and takes more time on the back end, but it's way easier while recording. And that is when you have all of the cameras recording the entire time. You might start by doing a clap, and that clap gets the sound to lock in with the visual. And now you lock in 4 different video feeds. And then you have to go in post-production and change. Okay, she was talking, so let's fade it into her. Or, all right, now I'm asking a question, let's fade it into me. That just seems like a lot of work, but it makes the recording a little bit easier. But if you go to growyourshow.com/PDF, you could grab a video switcher that there's a couple of them with 2 different angles or 4 different angles. And you can use that while you're going. And you just got to remember when, Madz's friend is talking, I've got to push 4 or something like that.
Yeah, no, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just go ahead and grab that. If you want to put in your email, you can. If not, just scroll down a little bit. So what would you say is like the biggest mistake you've ever made, or you and the girls have ever made on that podcast?
Man, it's mainly on my side, on the technical side of just not having the right equipment, jumping in a little bit too quick before we're really familiar with everything. When you're recording your first episode or second or even your 5th, you shouldn't be pausing to say, hold on, I don't know if I've recorded this or not. Hold on, talking to the microphone. All those real basic things, I feel like if we'd have just played for a little bit longer, we might have had a more successful start. But man, we've been super lucky. We've had great support, and I really can't complain at all. Obviously, having 2 cool co-hosts helps, but
It does help a lot. One thing, so you're mentioning that the biggest mistakes, it sounds like, came from jumping in quickly and starting to record, but not having a good feeling for how it was going to sound or what you needed to do. And something that I've heard a lot, and I kind of wish I did it, is that people say you should record a minimum of 10 episodes that you never plan on releasing.
Man, that's awesome.
And I bet you, for example, if you did that, if you just, all right, let's just do a practice and let's do another practice one. We'll talk about this, or let's do another practice one. And you had 10 under your belt, you would probably have learned a lot of did I record? Did I push this button? Are the mics all on? I actually record. So I'm right next to a mic right now, and it sounds in my ears like I'm using the mic. But the truth is I didn't triple check. I did not triple check that I was using the right mic. And it's happened before where it was set on the wrong microphone. And actually, I'm going to switch it right now just so that the listener can hear what it sounds like if you're using the wrong microphone. In 3, 2, 1. I'm in the other mic. Does the sound quality totally change for you?
Oh man, I can still hear you, but it sounds like you're in a tunnel, like you're in a deep cave,
Yeah. I've recorded a few episodes that like I didn't know that I was using my webcam mic instead of the Shure that I spent all the money on. And my co-host is a podcaster. Let's say that they're you, and they don't say you're in a tunnel. They're too humble to be like, bro, fix your mic. I don't think the mic that you're using is the one that you're thinking that you're using.
Yeah, I needed
that. I needed that. That doesn't sound very sure, does it?
I actually just saw that they came out with a new Shure, a new version of this one.
Okay.
I know it's in Australia. So all the problems that people have with this one, like not having enough gain and all that stuff, is apparently all built into the new one. I don't know what
that's
the
pretty cool.
release date on it is, but I saw it on YouTube. They did a test on it. It seemed really cool. I'm sure the expense is astronomical, but
I bet maybe they'll drop the price of that one and then have the other one at a premium price. Who knows?
Right after I buy 4 of them.
Exactly. Yeah, a couple grand right away. Do you recommend to the listener, if they're about to launch a podcast, that they invest in some decent equipment? Like, for example, what I'm seeing on your side, you're in a room that has some of the walls that are treated. You're in the corner of the room. You have got a pretty good mic, like one of the best mics, a Shure SM7B. It's the same one that Michael Jackson recorded the song Thriller on. You got nice headphones that probably cost a couple $100 for one pair of headphones. And then your mics have mic stands and the boom stands, boom arms. And basically all of this stuff, the headphones, the microphone, the boom, and I guess you don't have the Rodecaster Pro. You mentioned a different brand, but for the interface system, that's another few $100, I'm sure. Do you recommend to the listener that they go all out and spend thousands of dollars when they decide to launch a podcast, or should they do it a different way?
Man, I would take everything that you think you can afford to get and double it and get that. Because, man, not only do I have all this money in this stuff that we're currently using, but I've got couple $100 worth of stuff in the closet that I can't use because it's not good. But as far as this room, man, I see you got a Rogue shirt on. This is my little CrossFit room. Just on the other side of these curtains, I've got all my equipment. This is actually a rock climbing wall that I built for the kids. Yeah, and then, so, man, I'm just trying to make the most of what we have. We got kicked out of the kitchen is where we initially started doing this thing, and it just became too much work. You know, every time we wanted to do it, we had to set it up, tear it down, and But yeah, as far as equipment, go in with as much money as you possibly can and add to it and get the best stuff that you possibly can afford. And even with this Mixcast 4 that I'm using, it's very similar to what you have, but in hindsight, I wish I'd have just went ahead and got the best interface that I could afford as well, but I didn't know. Now I'm kind of invested in this one and I'm going to keep it till it dies. But
did you buy a cloud lifter? And for the listener, real quick, a cloud lifter. Stephen mentioned this microphone. He was pointing at the Shure SM7B. The issue with the Shure SM7B is sometimes it doesn't have enough gain, and so it can come across a little bit quiet. And so the way people fix those is usually with a good interface. The Rodecaster should be enough, and maybe what you're using, Stephen, is enough. But other people, when they have that mic, they will also use a little contraption that connects through, I think, the XLR. It's called a cloud lifter, and it just boosts the signal. And so I'm just asking Stephen, does he use a cloud lifter, or is it good enough with his equipment?
With this interface, I think it can do up to 50 decibels on pre-gain. And I think with this, without a cloud lifter, I'm at 37. So it's sufficient in handling and pushing what it needs to get to it. But when I almost just ordered one just because everything I read said you need one, but you hit it right on the head. With the right interface, you don't, but there's a lot of them you do.
So you would recommend to the listener to go all out. I'm not 100% sure if that's where I am. I think there's some equipment that is good enough and like pretty good, but I don't want the listener to mishear me. There's some equipment that you can get a pretty decent mic for like $70, a pretty decent mic with very little issues, with a good noise gate that works to be able to connect you into your computer by a USB instead of XLR. And that can be an affordable way to start and definitely do sound good. I think one of the problems is that people get the wrong mics. Like the condenser mic that you mentioned comes with its own problems. It's just very echoey, reverb. You hear everything. You hear the dog barking. You definitely hear it when you or your girls touch the microphone or karate chop it. And so I think a lot of people are like, ooh, a $70 dynamic mic or $120 for a condenser mic. Ooh, I'm going to go up. I'm going to go to this condenser mic. And it actually sounds worse. So I'm not sure if I'm all about like spend the most amount of money. I definitely think go to growyourshow.com/PDF and actually get some stuff that we vetted and is going to work. And then spend the one that you feel comfortable with is where I would say, even though we may possibly disagree, I'm not sure if we do it, and I'm not trying to make it sound like that. I want to hear your opinions on why getting really good equipment in the beginning is important to you and why you want to suggest that to the listener as well.
I've listened to your show. Your show sounds great. Your microphone sounds great. Everything sounds good. But I've also listened to my share of podcasts that don't sound great. And man, I don't listen to them. As soon as you hear it, no matter how good of content they're putting out, I just can't listen to it. So I don't want that to be the cause that anybody doesn't listen to our show. So if we can combat that and just put forth as much as, and the microphone you're using, man, it's equivalent to this one. And I've heard some basic dynamic microphones that cost $50, $60 that sound as good as this one to my ear.
Yeah, it can happen. The Samson Q2U is pretty good for like $70. The, what is it called? The ATR 2100X is pretty good for like around $100. Mm-hmm. The one that I'm using for like $250-ish is a different Shure mic, MV7. And I love it. Like, I don't need anything but this. Like, this is fine. If somebody said to me, like, I'll trade you for a MV7, even though it's more expensive and probably technically better, I'm like, no, I'm really happy with this mic. I'm really good with it. Even if I got it for free, I want this mic.
Oh, that's awesome, man. If you got that for free, because you sound good. And that's the big
even thing. If I got the $500 mic for free.
Okay.
No, I had to pay for this. Let the record stand that I did not get this one for free.
Hey,
but it was half the price of yours. It was half the price. I'll say it was like $250.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened with me is I spent so much on things that didn't work. Actually, I went with a knockoff of what you have is the Fiduce something 40, I think is a...
I had not heard of it.
It's on Amazon. They're like $60. So, I ordered 4 of them and it had a different sound to it. It was very deep and very bassy. So that started my whole cycle of microphones. That's how I ended up where I'm at now.
I wonder how your girls would sound on that one.
They sound fine on anything.
Okay.
Because they don't have that extra bass. So
okay, got it.
Picking up them, and they sound great. But I just felt bad me talking on an expensive mic, and I wanted all of our sounds to kind of coincide and be from the same source, if that makes sense.
I like that. That's something I certainly appreciate. So, for example, I'm interviewing you on the podcast right now. And one of the things that I make sure you do is have headphones and have a professional mic.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear in the onboarding material to coming on our podcast. I believe that it's pretty clear, but I still get on where somebody is not using headphones or they're not using a microphone. And I'm like, I'm not going to record. I don't want you to sound bad. I don't want it to make me look bad. And I don't want anyone, like you said before, I don't want to lose listeners over it. I don't want listeners to be like, not trusting that we're going to have at least a decent sound quality.
Right. And man, I don't know if you've talked about it before, but the way that you kind of vetted me into this and onboarded me with all the emails, man, I learned a lot just from that.
Oh, cool. Let's talk about it. Yeah. Give us a couple of takeaways that the listener might be able to take.
Man, from the second that we first spoke and you asked me about coming on the show, the first thing you did was send me an email. And it asked for my bio and some other information, and it gave me the full expectation of what this was going to look like. So it put it on my calendar, and I think today I've got 2 or 3 emails from you just reminding me about it and telling me what I need, and it was awesome. And it really taught me a whole lot.
Yeah, I think, so I use Calendly, and a couple things that I like about the Calendly. So I have an email template that goes out to anybody that I want to come on. It tells them all the stuff that you mentioned, like what we might ask, that you need headphones and a microphone, where to send your headshot bio and links that you want us to have. And on the original email, on the onboarding email, there's a link. It's a Calendly link, and the Calendly link has it goes over those questions again. Will you be wearing headphones? Will you be using a professional microphone? And like gets the link to your show so I can easily grab it. And that'll import it into your calendar and mine. And another reason why I use Zoom is easily integrated with my Calendly. So when it propagates, or what's a better word for that? When it generates a Zoom link for us to use, that Zoom link is then put into the calendar so that you've got it. And I think it just sends like, I don't remember how many invites, but I've been thinking about going less, but one of them I think is like 2 weeks out. And then at least one of them I think is the day before or something like that. So, because I don't want to jump on here and be all by myself just listening to crickets. So,
Right.
we do send out a couple.
Yeah, no, I think it was perfect. It gave me a full opportunity to back out if I wanted to, or to reschedule. And it was great. I think it was exactly how it should be.
Cool. I appreciate that. So anybody who's looking to learn that stuff, and maybe if you want to become a guest on the podcast, reach out to us, and you could just reach out team@Grow Your Show. Let us know that you want to be a listener. No, that you want to be a guest. You're already a listener. You crushed it. And now to be a guest on the show. And then you can see the same like onboarding materials that Stephen got as well. Any other takeaways that we should give to the listener before we jump off, Stephen?
I think you hit all of my questions, and you've kind of tackled some of my problems with the monetizing. And, one more question on that, though. What is the first step of reaching out? Like, let's say you're not at the point of getting that 1,000 listeners a month or whatever the minimum for most of those monetizing marketplaces are.
I just published an episode not too long ago, Stephen. I would like to look it up. I don't think I'd be able to find it quick enough, but
okay.
It talks about 3 ways that you can monetize a show. And in the shortest fashion that I can give, there's a lot more detail on there. Yeah, one of the ways is the CPM model, cost per meal, and you need at least 1,000 listeners for that. And that's the lowest amount that you can make. That's the lowest amount of money that you can make on a podcast is the traditional way. The next 2 ways you make a lot more if they work for you. The second way is a way that you reach out and get a partner of the show. So you reach out to them and you command the price rather than them reaching out to you and commanding the price. When they reach out to you, they're going to say something like $20 CPM. So that means if you have 1,000 listeners on a show, then you're going to make $20 in a show. That's not really enough to write home about. It's not going to handle like $3,000 of equipment either. So right. I tell people to kind of skip that all the way. Don't even think about a CPM model. Don't even worry about the traditional way everybody tells you. And the other 2 ways are a little bit better. Number 2 is a way that I think you're going to monetize, and I will share it with you here in a second. And number 3 is the way that I monetize. And so the way that I'm suggesting you monetize is when you reach out to the person, and I'll teach you how in a moment. And option number 3 is when you sell your own stuff. So I only sell my own product, my own service. We do editing and post-production for other people's podcasts. And so we're able to make highly significant money on our podcast, but it's because our listener reaches out to us. Our listener says, hey, I want to work with you. So I become essentially my own sponsor. And that's the easiest way to make the most amount of money. I've got a client who I talk about in that episode who was making closer to $10,000 a month with the option number 2 that I'll tell you about. And he switched it and he went to option number 3, where he's selling his own product and services. And now he's making closer to $500,000 per year. So it's 40-ish grand, $45,000-$50,000 a month by doing option number 3. And he likes it better because he's making 5 times the amount of money.
Right.
But not everybody has their own product or service. So let's talk about 2. And it's going to be for you, Stephen, and for a listener who might resonate in the same way. It's like, I don't want to do the CPM model because it's crap. I don't want to do the selling my own product and service because I don't have one. So what's my other option? It's the middle option. And you're going to be reaching out to people. Step 1, figure out who your avatar is. Figure out what is your unique proposition. I'm just going to call it a USP, unique selling proposition. Okay. USP. So figure out your avatar, figure out the USP, and now decide. Step number 3 is decide who do you know, not who have you heard about, who do you know that serves that same avatar. So if your avatar is, let's just call it a 12-year-old girl, then who do you know that serves that? Maybe there's a gymnastics place right down the street from you. Maybe your girls go to it. Maybe there's a karate place. I don't know if girls are still into Barbies, but when I grew up, my sister had a Barbie and I would steal it from her sometimes, but we don't have to talk about that right now. But she had a Barbie. And so I know that girls were into that back then. And so like you can just decide, all right, I know who my perfect avatar is. I know what I do that's different to serve them than other people. Now that I know those 2 things, who do I know that has a business that also serves this person and doesn't detract from me? Well, if it was a gymnastics place down the street, great. That way, That way, what would likely happen is they would promote you in front of the rest of the people that go to that gymnastics place. So it's kind of like a win-win. And now you reach out to them and you say something like, hey, I've got 2 girls. One of them goes to your place and she's 11 years old. We've been doing a podcast for X amount of time. This is who we serve. This is what we do that's different. And I'm looking for a gymnastics place. And I'd rather work with you because the other gymnastics place my daughter doesn't go to. So I prefer to reach out to you first. This is kind of like the sales pitch, if you will, by the way. I prefer to reach out to you first. If you can't do it, it's no big deal. I can ask them and we can promote them, but I'd really rather give you the business. And what I'm thinking is we could do this for 6 or 12 months. And typically my plan is that we'll be making $3,000 or $4,000 a month off of the podcast. Nothing special, but something that can really at least pay for the equipment that we have.
Right.
And I was thinking maybe I could work with you and we could just try it for 6 months at, let's just say $2,000 a month. So $12,000. And my hope is that you get a lot more business out of it, something like that. And now maybe they could write a check for you for $12,000 and you could sponsor them for a whole 6 months. Here's a big takeaway as well. There's a lot of takeaways and I'm getting lost with all of the information that I can give you. Here's the takeaway. If you're going to have somebody sponsor the podcast, and everybody definitely write this down, 1 episode is not enough. 1 month is not enough. And even 3 months is probably not long enough for them to get the value. So somebody's saying, yeah, let me just try it on 1 episode. They're already going to fail. Dabblers get crushed. People that just try things out and attempt things with 1 try, they always fail. But when your sponsor's in it with you for at least 6 months, they're probably going to get some value. So this is beneficial for a few reasons. If I'm talking to the gymnastics place or a lender or a coach or a mentor in a certain space or a psychologist, a children's psychologist, a child psychologist, if I'm talking with one of them to sponsor my podcast, Myla and Madz with Dad, and they say, 6 months, can we try like a month first? I don't want to commit to a whole 6 months. Well, you can have the confidence to say to that person, no, you wouldn't get value if you tried it for a month or 2. If all you did was a month or 2, the person listening isn't going to be able to start trusting you immediately. It takes 6 to 12 times of hearing you. If you look at science, 6 to 12 times of hearing your message before somebody's ever willing to decide if they're going to take action on that. If I put you on for a month and I'm doing a weekly episode, they're only going to hear you 4 times. There is no way that it's going to be valuable to you. That's why, then you say the word, that's why I have a minimum of 6 months. And then you let them know that the 6 month really does help them. The truth is it does help them. That's actually, it's not a manipulation or a lie or anything like that. Like it actually is way better for them. But it's also better for you, Stephen, you and your daughters, because if you try to get somebody to sponsor an episode or a month of episodes, like 4 or 8 episodes, you're going to put in more effort than it even costs to get paid for a month or for an episode.
That's right.
Like I would say for most of us, we're worth at least $50 an hour. And some of us are worth $1,000 an hour or $200 or $500 an hour. But if you believe that you're worth $50 an hour and it takes you a week of work to get a sponsor for an episode, you just made yourself like $300 with 40 hours. And that's only $9 an hour or something. I'll actually type it in, but it's only like $9 an hour. It's under minimum wage. So if you can get somebody to sponsor for 6 to 12 months, you only do it the one time, and then you have 6 months of, we'll call it passive income or residual income coming in. That benefits you because you don't always have to be going and trying. And this is what I'll end with. I'm reading a book right now, and it says, it's called Never Lose a Customer Again. And one of the questions that he proposes, the author, he proposes a question. He said, what if you still had every client that ever started with you? And I was like, dang, we'd be making like almost 3 times the amount of money as we're making right now. You know, if we're making $40,000 a month, we would have been making $120,000 a month. If we were making $1,000 a month, we would have made $3,000 a month. If all we did is just kept all those clients. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to keep, it's expensive to keep acquiring a new customer or acquiring a new sponsor. It's expensive, it's time expensive, and it costs money. So getting them to stay with you for 6 months, a year, or longer is going to be a lot better for you as well as for them. So
that's awesome.
All right.
One of the takeaways is not to undervalue yourself. That's what I took from what you said, because man, you went from $20 to $12,000 in almost the same sentence of find out what you're worth, find out what your time's worth, and put a value on it. That's awesome, man. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. We're going to end this episode. If you're listening, don't want you to miss it. It's something that I know you need in podcasting, and I'm going to give it to you. I'll see you there. You're not alone if you're ready to either get your very first affordable microphone or if you're ready to upgrade your equipment to some legit podcasting studio equipment. Because on all of the forums over the last few months, I'm seeing this all the time. Even my own personal clients that work with my team, they're ready to get that next microphone. They're asking us for it. Additionally, when I'm on discovery calls with potential clients, they're always asking for this stuff. Hey, what mic do you recommend? Hey, what lighting do you recommend? What webcam should I be using? So many questions. And so what we did, my whole team has put together a PDF so that if you're one of those people who is looking to either get your very first affordable microphone, or if you're ready to upgrade your equipment to more professional podcast studio equipment, whether it's soundproofing or whatever, we've got you covered by going to growyourshow.com/PDF. And you can download the PDF for free, or right there on the webpage is everything that you would have, and you don't need to download the PDF. Either way, just go to growyourshow.com/PDF, which will put you to the podcasting equipment that me and my team have personally vetted. I'll see you on the next episode.